is Maui and Hector.
Mm-hmm.
What's your view?
Well, you can take that for granted, can't you? That this is just one of the pixels in the big picture. But I have to take so many steps back to make any logical approach to it all, in the sense that these dolphins are coming up against our fishing processes, and to sort of question the whole basis of commercial fishing is pretty anarchic, but those are my deepest feelings, that I don't think really that there's any evidence biologically that ocean life can stand up to pressures that we put on it, that we actually use skyrockets to catch fish, because we put satellites into orbit and they give us an exact location on the planet, and we're able to navigate to find all the secret reefs that once were natural marine reserves, that were kept replenishing the areas that we were hitting. That technology, you're talking about a yachting magazine, you know, fishing programs, a dime a dozen on television, and they're all supported by a huge industry, from making echo sounders to fancy outboards, even right down to every month or two someone's working out a better way of hooking fish. So with all that technology that we're focusing on whale populations, there's no historical evidence whatsoever that it can stand up to it. And poor old Maui and Hector's dolphins are just part of that process, where using nets is certainly a questionable part of it all. When I wrote a book back in the 70s called Islands of Survival, I was hopeful that if I told the story of some people that lived for 800 years on an island and still had about the same level of fish abundance that on an uninhabited island, I thought it might make a difference. Of course it didn't. So I republished it in America recently as part of a book called Gaia Calls, and again, doodly squat, but the point remains. The terrible irony is that those people are being evacuated now because of climate change that we have caused. I offered them as a model of a system. It gave me hope that here was a society that had developed a sustainable way of fishing. And perhaps if we looked at the blueprint underlying that, which we made films about and wrote about in detail, we might be able to form a good relationship with marine life. But the terrible irony is the very people who offered us the model are the ones that are some of the first to go underwater because of our Western world. So in that context, we have the sad story of Maui and Hector's dolphins. I'm a wee bit afraid because it might dilute our concern here in New Zealand, but I have to think, as I'm not really just a New Zealander, I'm a global person, that this is happening with many other species of dolphins in other countries, and whether it's a dolphin that lives in the Sea of Cortez or the waters of Hong Kong or the coast of Chile, or in the rivers of India. There are many other species. That doesn't, I hope, in any way dilute our concern for Hector's dolphins and Maui's dolphins. But taking a few steps back, if you go back historically, we used to have much bigger populations of dolphins in New Zealand waters, and those are the ones that we're not including them when we talk about Hectors and Maui, but they're not doing well at all. The evidence is there, and scientists have contacted me about this recently, that our populations of dolphins are dropping, and there's all sorts of theories about why. And I suggest that if you consider this, that dolphins, along with several other apex predator animals, have got a lifestyle which is the opposite of the rabbit. Rabbits have a boom and bust situation. They're herbivores, you know, but these major carnivores actually limit their population to the food supply, and we are probably killing off the dolphins by going out with purse seining boats which work at night with lights, attracting the fish with the magnetism of light, taking vast numbers of them, turning them into chook food or feeding to salmon food or whatever, cat food. But basically we're destroying our other species of dolphins by taking away their food. We don't see them wash up on the beach starving, dead. They just don't reproduce. I can remember talking to them about aspects of what they were going to study. Yeah, it's way back before they began their studies on the. And they were so courageous because they took on you know, the subject of the Hectors dolphin and set about an inflatable boat and did a complete tour of the South Island to sort of establish where populations were, and they've got wonderfully complementary skills. Steve is sort of a mathematically orientated sort of a guy with a good grasp of physics, and has been able to cope with the pretty demanding technology of looking at the sound systems of Hector's dolphins, because the smaller the dolphin, the higher the frequency. So to be able to record sounds that are so, you've got to have very special tape recorders and all that sort of thing. So you can sort of, that's just a minor example, but why they formed a really wonderful team, interlocking, an interlocking team. Yeah. Perhaps Liz is better known because she's more of a lecturer and that sort of thing, but it would be a mistake to underestimate the contribution of Steve to the work. Well, the ideal outcome is so much of a dream that I hesitate to articulate it, but it seems quite possible that the dream that we might have will be crunching into the hard reality of consequences that we've created for ourselves, that we may not achieve our dreams, but we're going to have to cope with the consequences that are going to mean that one way or another our relationship with the sea is going to have to alter, because climate change, which is on people's tongues these days, has a twin brother that isn't so well understood, and that's ocean acidification. Now, it's actually been measured here by New Zealand scientists. We already have an effect. It's manifesting itself more in other parts of the world, like the American Northwest, where oysters no longer form their shells. They have to get import spat from Hawaii, or grow them in pH controlled vats, because the pH at the ocean can't do it now. And it's not as if it's you've got to take, you know, you've got to give a really big picture to understand some of these things, that the ocean sea levels don't rise uniformly, and nor does the acidity, because there's a whole variety of other factors that influence that. So the ways that we've customarily treated the sea, we may find, for example, our mussel industry is doomed, because we're not really picking up the gauntlet with regard to climate change and doing all that we could as fast as we could, then we may have to suffer the consequences. And you know, those are the realities that make the dream. We can keep trying, we can keep doing our very best, but if you notice the stuff that I post on Facebook, while on one stage I might be posting something celebrating the beauty of forest life or sea life, one of my preoccupations is this whole subject of climate change, and right down to I'm following very minutely the development of things like electric cars, solar, renewable energy. It would seem silly for me to be running around in the forest all day trying to trap stoats and put things right here and ignore those aspects. If you or I or any of us can do anything to advance our society towards a renewable society, then that'll be a huge contribution we'll be making towards Maui's dolphin.
Yeah. Because
Maui's dolphin are caught up with us in these big problems that we are creating.
Yeah. And tell me, just going to another issue that's been rising lately, and that's the salmon farms in the Marlborough Sound. And I met the guy from Safaris when I was down on Duval Island.
Yeah,
Duval Island.
Guy,
yeah.
I haven't met him, but I exchange with him a lot,
Yeah.
and I feel as though sometimes you develop a relationship whereby when you do actually come to meet someone, you find that most of the water's already under the bridge. And I totally endorse every effort that brave man has made. Yeah.
And I remember him telling me when I was at French Pass about if you took all of the cows in New Zealand, the dairy cows, and put them in those nets, that it was like every 3 months all of the shit in New Zealand was going to be dumped on the seabed. And so I see that they've still been able to get some access to be able to do it in those areas.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
Well, you know, I've opposed the development of it. I don't see it as sustainable. Basically we're killing fish to feed to fish to make a product which is you know, for people on upper incomes.
You're talking about krill?
Well, the food that they're feeding to the salmon is varied now. They were bringing in fish meal from Chile at one stage, which was coming from sprats. I'm not just sure what they'll always use the cheapest source of food to feed the animals on, but it's.
I was told that in one of the salmon farms, quite a big one, I'll remain nameless, their fish stocks came from 9 fish. That was the whole of their gene pool.
Well, that's a very... I have visited, I once did a television documentary at Port Underwood and that salmon farm, and and I saw the whole process, and you know, we used to have rosy ideas that sea farming was the great future, and I can go right back to one of my old heroes, Arthur C. Clarke, who actually envisaged, while he got it right with the satellites, he didn't get it right with his ideas about using dolphins like sheepdogs and farming whales. So you know, that was part of the old dream of farming the sea. But I don't think that that's really going to be part of our future. It's just energy intensive. There are so many problems involved with the animals genetically, and you know, if you want to pull it down, where do you start? There's just so many problems long term with a thing like salmon farming. We all like salmon; it's very nice, but it's not part of our future, I don't think.